So welcome everybody to another session on our webinar, and I have got a real beauty for you today. So I have invited Fiona to come into my treatment room to come and speak to us about all things PR. So Fiona, welcome. Thank you so much for giving us your time. It's so good to have you. So I've heard Fiona speak before and she's brilliant, and there were so many notes taken, hints and tips and loads of ideas. So I hope you've got a pen and paper ready. Otherwise, just press pause, grab a pen and paper, maybe a cup of tea or something, and then come back and join us and press play again. So Fiona, thank you again. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself? What do you do, and what are you going to speak to us a little bit about today?
Okay, so I'm Fiona. I have spent about 10 years working in the PR industry. I ran a boutique PR agency, so I set that up when I was 24. I worked with small businesses, startups across the sort of consumer spectrum, so fashion, interiors, beauty, lifestyle, and worked really to put essentially small businesses, unknown brands into the mainstream media, so the likes of Vogue and Sunday Times Style. And yeah, so I stepped back from that, bit of a life change, and now with Boss Your PR, my focus is really on educating. So it's about using that DIY PR model and really teaching people the skill set and showing them the resources and information that they need in order to be able to do it themselves, because ultimately a lot of startups, a lot of small businesses can't afford £800 a month upwards for a PR retainer. So that's my mission. My mission is to spread the word, that DIY PR is something that we can all do. And yeah, so today I've got we've broken it down into sort of areas of expertise in terms of PR and communications. So there's beginner's level, and then sort of how you can grow from there. So that's really what I want to chat to you about today. Yes, really excited to be here.
It would be so good. Thank you so much. So if, say for example, I'm just a qualified aromatherapist, I've got my business name and maybe a logo, and I'm now looking about going, right, what do I do now? Because there are so many social media platforms, and actually you could spend all of your working day just keeping on top of your social media platforms, interacting, keeping community. It all sounds really quite terrifying. Or a business that has been established for years, maybe, that hasn't ventured onto social media yet, that has got by with recommendations, and is maybe now starting to look at setting up on social media and just making themselves more visible to people. How do we go about that? What would be your recommendation?
Okay, so there's a few things that we can try. Just to start with, though, I think it would be really valuable to demystify PR. So PR is public relations, and essentially that covers communication. So that's communication with any stakeholders in or around your business, whether that's suppliers or clients or people that you work with or followers on social media. They're all stakeholders, and PR covers the communication we have with all of those. So some of these different routes are going to speak to different stakeholders. But ultimately, I want to share, what I call routes to visibility. So routes to get seen, ways to get in front of people and ways to increase that footfall and drive that traffic through your door. So some starting points. So you mentioned social media, which for so many businesses these days is the starting point. But actually, there's a number of nuances within that. So not every platform is going to be right for every business. You might be, a very similar business in terms of your offering to a competitor, but actually you might be going after very different target markets. So it's really important for you to understand who you're targeting, who your ideal client is, what's your ideal client avatar, and where do they live online? Where do they spend their time? What platforms do they use? And we can sort of break that up into a general understanding, as maybe Instagram is a slightly younger audience. Facebook is maybe it's more of a website platform that a slightly older audience tends to respond well to. And then you've got LinkedIn, which is very much, typically B2B, business to business, and, the more corporate side of things. So each platform does a very different thing, but ultimately what you need to do sort of first off is decide where you want to sit and where your ideal client sits. So it might be a compromise where you say, okay, well, I think I can reach part of my audience through Instagram and part of my audience through Facebook, but don't overload yourself. So I'd say pick a couple and do them well. So your first thing is, if you've got your branding, if you've got your logo, if you've got a colour palette, is keep that consistency through all your communications. You know, whether that's picking one or two colours and using that around your imagery, around your text, around your sort of formatting. I think it's important right from the start to give some element of cohesion to your brand and your output.
It does make sense. I met with my web designer the other day, and I showed him some clever things I'd done on Instagram, and he's like, "You are not using the same font as your logo." And I was like, "Well, I was trying to be creative." He's like, "Well, stop it. Don't be creative, just do the same thing." And then, of course, when he starts showing me, you know, if you do it like this and then everything looks the same, it's so much easier for people to look at. And when people are busy, what they don't want is more busyness on the eye. You know, it's such a quick, you know, a few seconds where they see you, and if it doesn't look quite right, they'll stop looking, won't they?
Exactly. So, and this is with Instagram. So if someone lands on your Instagram, if they're on their mobile, you know, they only see a fairly small amount of your content. So actually that content, what they do see in those first sort of 6 to 9 pictures need to be on brand. And in terms of what you share on social, any element of visibility is about positioning yourself as an expert. So it's about sharing your knowledge, sharing your value with your audience, and really building that trust factor. So you've kind of it's like a relational capital thing. So you've got to give value in order to get people invested in you. So I think those are the priorities on social: is keep your branding really, really clear. Share insight into your world, share insight into your knowledge, and give people the information that they might need. So give them a way to access you by email, give them a way to find you geographically, you know, encourage people to connect with you through your DMs or your comments, and really just get active on those platforms that are going to work for you. That's the first route to visibility. Second, I would say, is your website. And websites sound big and scary, but they don't need to be. So you can get onto a platform like Squarespace or WordPress and create a very cheap, essentially very cheap website. So follow a very simple template. It will look professional. Keep it clean. Again, let your branding sort of show through. So your logo, your colorways, your fonts, those sort of branding guidelines. And yeah, just I would keep that a very simple job to start with. Maybe have your homepage, have an about, have a contact page, and list off your key services. You know, with all of these things, we don't have to overcomplicate them. So your competitor might have an amazing website, but they might have spent £5,000 on it. So you know, everyone has a starting point. Everyone's sort of at a different stage in their journey, but a website doesn't need to be pricey. You just need to be visible, and visibility, you know, in person is one thing, but visibility online in terms of search engine rankings is hugely important, especially if you're serving a geographical community. So it might be someone's looking for a aromatherapist in Buckinghamshire, or you know, whatever it might be, but that kind of content is what you need on your website to enable people to find you. And SEO can be a whole other session.
Well, that's the kind of work that is.
But we're talking PR. So I would say number 3 in terms of routes to visibility to get you started is set up your own blog. And again, this doesn't need to be intimidating. This can be done through any of the website templates that you can build a simple website with. And again, much in the same way as social media, we're talking about you sharing your knowledge and sharing some insight, you know, maybe behind the scenes, maybe an in-depth into your services, you know, what exactly is this element that I offer, or you know, what can this oil be used for?
Or write up on a new training they've had, or a new product, you know, a new treatment that they might be offering, or something like that. Brilliant
content. And you know, so this doesn't need to be consuming. So you might do one blog every few weeks, but actually having that content again shows your expertise, shows your knowledge, brings people into your brand, builds that trust factor, and is also great again for that SEO element, the search engine optimization element. Number 4, I would say, is networking. And I mean in real life as well as online. So your social
real people, actual people,
actual real life people, which is where the magic happens, right? So social media is amazing.
Yes.
We connected on social media, you know, you've got to love it. And it's great. Those online connections are fantastic. But actually you need to take it into the real world. So I would always recommend doing a combination of networking. And, you know, ultimately sometimes it's about these relationships that we build and the people we connect with that really elevate us in terms of putting us forward for other opportunities, connecting us with potential clients. And I think in any business, building that support network around you is really important. So, you know, I would recommend sort of social media, but also digital sort of directory platforms, and whether that's sort of regional specific ones or international ones like the Female Entrepreneur Association, for example, right through to in-person networking. So whether that's industry specific networking, or, you know, networking for people in business, or the business to business side of things. So networking is really, really important, and it's something, you know, it's easy for us to ignore, say I don't feel like, you know, doing much in-person connecting, I don't want to go to a business brunch, but actually there is real value in going out and doing those things. They lead to other opportunities. So in terms of like a beginner's sort of set, if you like, you know, keep it simple. Social media, be present. Website, very simple template, get it up there, and you can always work on it. It can grow and develop as you finesse and hone your brand. Be present on a blog, start seeding out that content, and actually, you know, repurposing content is really important as well. So you might write a blog post that might then give you 5 posts on social media, that you're filtering that content through your channels, and networking is now really important. And all of that applies for anyone at any stage of their business. So that's like the groundwork principles.
That's really good. There's work to be done, Fiona. I think especially the whole meeting face-to-face thing. Okay, so imagine now that I am an aromatherapist. So I've been working maybe 4 or 5 years. I've got my Facebook page. It's got a few hundred members on it. We've got a little bit of interaction going on there. And now I'm starting to look at my PR and think, right, it's time to step up. What do I do next? What can be on the hit list next? Obviously, I'm still doing everything else from what we've just said, but what can I add to that, maybe?
Next level visibility, right. So I've mentioned sharing your expertise. With this next level, I think we can ramp it up again. Now, the thing to keep in mind that I was always very wary of is, what if I share too much information? They're going to feel like they don't need me, or they'll go somewhere else, or they'll buy the oils and they'll like give it a go themselves. But actually, you know, people don't do that. People aren't that committed to learning something without, you know, just purely from what they can pick up on a blog or social media, for example. But it's that trust building exercise. So it's, you know, again, that relational capital. I'll give you a load of information, I'll educate you, but actually while I'm doing that, I'm kind of showing you how good I am. So then that sort of giving then comes back to you when they trust you to the point that, right, okay, I'm going to go to her, you know, she knows what she's talking about. So don't be afraid of sharing your expertise, because ultimately it can only foster positive. And if someone is going to take your information and run with it, then they're not your ideal client, and they're not someone that you need to be bothering with.
Absolutely. Okay? Just let them go.
So that, again, that will run through everything, but I think really ramping up the knowledge that you share, how much of yourself you give, because, you know, ultimately at this stage, you've been working in the industry for a while, you really know your stuff. Again, you might be learning new things, doing new training, taking your expertise up a level. So why not increase what you're sharing? And also, if you've built those foundations, you've built a community, you've built a network, they're going to want to keep seeing more from you. So ramp it up, and that will happen quite naturally. Along that sort of topic, point 2 would be guest blog. So you've got your blog, you're sharing your content. Who else can you share it with?
Yeah.
So is there a company that you can write a guest blog for, or someone, maybe a like-minded business person that you can say, oh, well, you know, I'd love to have some content from you on my website. You know, maybe I can offer a guest post or share some expertise with you. There was something after I spoke at the retreat that you had a guest blogging opportunity, didn't you?
Yes, I did. Yes.
So what kind of relation?
Yeah, because you sent me all fired off, didn't you? And I was like, yes, I need to share my expertise with people. So the first company that I got in touch with, they're a diffuser company, a vaporizer, electronic vaporizer company. So I messaged them and said, you know, would you be interested in me appearing as a guest blog? And they came back, said yes. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to have to write something now. And actually it was fine. I really enjoyed it. And I had a gift of a vaporizer, which was a massive unexpected surprise. So that was really nice. But you know, I know that I have people contributing to my school blog as guests, and I love it when they are so willing to do that. So I think sometimes we think, oh, they're not going to want us, or they're going to think I'm really cheeky, but actually most people are going, oh, that's brilliant, that's fresh new content, yes, please, we'll take it.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's the key point, is don't be afraid to ask for these opportunities. Don't be afraid to put yourself forward. So it might be a brand that you've wanted to work with for a long time, or that you've been following for a while, and actually, you know, have you got expertise and value that you can offer to their readers? Yes, okay, tick that box, well, let's go for it. Because ultimately you're then finding a way to reach their audience. May very well suit your target audience very closely, but it's kind of how you leverage other platforms. So that's like next level visibility, is how you leverage other people's audiences as well as creating your own. So guest blogging is really important, and speaking opportunities would be point 3. And that might be, you know, we'll talk about networking, real life networking. You know, there's plenty of opportunities for, you know, people to speak at networking events, to share some of their wisdom, to make their industry accessible to an audience. So you can speak at networking events. You could, you know, maybe pitch yourself as a speaker or a trainer or an educator for more corporate events, or host your own event, or collaborate with someone on a workshop, or, you know, there's speaking opportunities and speaking engagements cover a vast range of opportunities. So it might be an industry trade show that you want to share your knowledge with. It might be a sort of health and wellness event, and actually you might approach the organisers and say, well, look, this is my area of expertise, and I feel like there's real value here to share with the audience at this event. Put yourself forward, and these things will start coming to you as you build your social, as you build your online presence, and as you network as well. But don't feel that what you've got is not worthy of being shared. Don't doubt yourself, because I will say, and I'll say it again, you know, once you've built some credibility in your industry, you are an expert in that industry. So there is no reason why what you've got to offer will not be seen as valuable. So speaking opportunities is a big one, and you know, that's a very personal thing. Some people, the thought of standing up and speaking in front of a room full of people, or doing an online webinar, is terrifying. And if it's just not your bag, then that's absolutely fine. But don't let that sort of nervousness hold you back from some of the other elements. So don't let that hold you back from real life networking. Don't let that hold you back from guest blogging. You know, it might be a hurdle that you can get over in a couple of years. You know, you build your confidence. If that's not right for you at the moment, shelve it, but don't bin it. Okay?
Shelve it, don't bin it. I like that. I like that. That's good.
So number 4 on this sort of level of expertise and sort of visibility, if you like, is to start approaching the media. So this is where we go into the traditional remit of PR, is speaking to the magazines, speaking to newspapers, making relationships with journalists, and really sort of positioning yourself across the media. So the reason why I've put this in that sort of second level of visibility is because you really need to have the groundwork in place before you start this. So PR, you need to have a toolkit ready before you approach it. And within that toolkit, on a very simple level, is social media, your website, your sort of brand identity and your hook. So maybe what stands you apart from the others, or what is your experience? You know, what subtleties have you got in your experience that might be different to others? What's your story? You know, maybe you've come from a corporate background and you've retrained in aromatherapy and now you're, you know, leading the way in that field. Have you got something that acts as a hook to position for the media? And ultimately you need a press release and you need imagery. So you can see all of these sort of building blocks filtering before you can even start thinking about picking up the phone and calling a journalist. That's where I've positioned it in that sort of second tier. So media can cover traditional media, so magazines that we read, that might be monthly magazines, might be weekly magazines, newspapers, it could be national, it could be regional, and it also verges then into podcasts. So podcasts are on the rise, and there's a lot of entrepreneurs setting up podcasts, doing interviews with people. A lot of businesses are using podcasts as a way to leverage and build a new audience. Because ultimately you can listen to a podcast when you're in the gym, when you're in the car, when you're going for a run. There's literally no barrier to when you can be interacting with a podcast. So they're becoming ever more a part of the media landscape. And with any of these sort of channels, and I'll go into sort of media specifically more in a moment, but let's take podcasts for instance initially, is you could have your own podcast as a way of building visibility, or you could just guest on other people's podcasts. So if you listen to a podcast where the host does an interview every week, or they bring in a different expert, or it's industry specific and they target the health and wellness sector and they speak to different experts in that field, any type of podcast like that is an opportunity for you to speak on and share your expertise. That's the chair, sorry.
I'm glad you cleared that up.
To speak on and share your expertise. So, like I said, it's fast growing route to visibility is podcasting.
And
so
you literally just contact the host of that podcast and say, I would love to speak on your podcast.
Absolutely, you know, I'm a big fan. I love that interview that you did with so and so, and I feel like I, you know, might have something to offer your audience. So much in the same way as you'd approach guest blogging, you know, just putting yourself forward for opportunities. So don't be shy about it, because if you're not pushing yourself forward for these things, someone else is. I always say it's the worst feeling when you're thinking, oh my god, I'd love to be on that podcast, or that magazine is just like my ideal, and you know, I don't know if they're going to be interested. They'll probably say, no, I'm not this or I'm not that, I've not been going long enough. And actually, you know, a couple of months down the line, you see a competitor or someone in a very similar field to you in that space in the magazine, or being interviewed on that podcast. Oh, you know, if only we'd had that sort of, you know, we'd had that confidence to put ourselves forward. So there are hurdles to overcome. I mean, I totally appreciate that. But in essence, it can be as simple as sending that email and asking the question. So podcasts, we'll park those for a moment. Looking at the media traditionally, so magazines, online, again, it's a similar process. It's about understanding the title or the website that you're wanting to see yourself positioned in, and giving the journalist that impression that you understand the space that you're pitching yourself to, and that you understand the audience that outlet speaks to, and really starting up that conversation. So, you know, what have you got to offer? What is your story? What is your hook? And, you know, at this level, again, you know, this is about footfall. This is about raising awareness and getting people to you and getting people interacting with your service. So I would explore how we use reviews as a way of building traffic. So can we offer a journalist a review of your service, or some training, or a taster or a sample, or a selection of product, you know, whatever that might be. So what can you offer a journalist to start that conversation and give yourself a bit of traction? So quite often in the health and wellness sector, a journalist will review a service or a product, and they will write about it in the magazine. And if we're talking about reaching the consumer, this is quite, you know, this is the ideal way, ideal sort of route into the media to do that. There's so many more other ways to do that, and actually we've kind of reserved some of them for the next tier of visibility, but there's nothing to stop you, you know, maybe, you know, having a foot in each. So doing a little bit of the next level stuff and doing a little bit of this, you know, depending on what your priorities are. And we'll talk about what the priority is of the next level engagement. But the priority of this is, you know, making people aware of your service and bringing that traffic to you. So bringing your traffic through that traffic through your website, bringing that traffic through your door ultimately. And yeah, speaking to the consumer through the media that is read by your target audience. So that's kind of my 4 points on that second level of visibility. Does that sort of make sense?
Yeah, that's really great. So then what about the aromatherapist that has been working for years, has, you know, got great network connections and would like to make themselves more visible on a more national level maybe, and actually to be seen more as an expert in their field? Because as aromatherapists, as IFPA aromatherapists, we're all very aware of some people giving poor safety advice to essential oil users. So more than ever, the voice of a professional aromatherapist needs to be heard, because people are being hurt and people are using essential oils unsafely. So to counteract the multi-million-dollar operations of the essential oil companies, actually what we have in this country are the professional aromatherapists and the educators. So one of the ways of tackling the essential oil safety issue is for us to be visible, for us to speak professional advice, and we're the ones that are qualified. We are the experts in our field. So and there's been a lot of talk actually within our association, is how do we tackle the misconceptions around essential oils and the issues with the safety. How do we then do that? And one of the things to do that is that our voices need to be heard. So how do we then go? So like, come on now, Fiona, you need to save aromatherapy. You need to save the people of the UK, okay, with dangerous essential oil usage. So tell us, no, I'm only joking. Tell us how do we do that?
I'll give it a go, okay.
Yeah, it's all down to you.
No, we can do this. Right, okay. So ultimately, all of these techniques, all of these routes to visibility are still going to apply, but we're maybe going to use them in a slightly different way. So I teased, when I was talking about the media, I teased a different type of content that you could be pitching to the media. So like you say, it becomes even more heavily about expertise, about your knowledge and what you're able to share with your audience, and actually what you need to share with your audience in this circumstance. So it's about ramping that up. So again, just taking it to the next level. Now, it becomes, in that sense, it becomes more about personal PR than about service PR.
Yes.
So, you know, when we're talking about getting journalists into review and having that dialogue with them about the service that you offer and what benefit that brings people and where the value is, you know, you're really talking about, yes, your expertise, but about the service.
Yeah.
And that speaks very much to the consumer PR world. Now, we go to the next level and we're looking at it being personal. So we're looking about you being the key part of the story. So your expertise being the key value in the story. Yeah. Now, to do that, we're looking at maybe guest articles. So it's like blogs is one thing, and then we take it to the next level and we do guest articles. So this will be a more in-depth piece, you know, and I'm sure, as in any sort of health sector, there'll be like, you know, maybe used to writing professional articles or research articles and that kind of thing. It's a similar notion, you know, that you're sharing your expertise by sharing it in a guest editorial, if you like, a guest article. And that could be with any magazine, that might be with a newspaper, that might be with an industry or trade publication. But it's a really potent way of sharing your knowledge. Okay. So you've got guest articles. You know, you can take part in wider features. Again, where you are sharing your knowledge, you're sharing your expertise, you're sharing your insight into the industry. So you can see how already we're starting to strike that theme of insight, expertise, industry knowledge and industry power. So, you know, it might be a wider feature on the state of the health and wellness industry. It might be something more specific where we can get into that aromatherapy sector. And this then introduces us to another aspect, which is what in the industry we call newsjacking. So it's like piggybacking on topical news stories.
Okay.
So it might be that there's something happening in the industry, or the problems that are faced by the industry are becoming more mainstream. So like you say, if people are getting injured by, you know, unsafe use of aromatherapy oils, you know, if there's bad practice essentially, which is kind of leaking into the mainstream media, that gives your industry champions, these experts, a chance to piggyback, to news on this topical story, and give the perspective and point of view of the trusted professionals. So, you know, there's so many wider issues that come into play when we talk about personal PR and this sort of next level activity. And this is why it's really important to build to this, so that you have build an understanding of the media and how it works, and where these opportunities might be, and actually how you can capitalize on them. So we're looking at guest articles. We're looking at being part of wider feature opportunities. We're looking at newsjacking. We're looking at interviews. You know, we could pitch to The Guardian or The Independent or one of the mainstream consumer magazines, and we can say, look, you know, I'm a trusted aromatherapy professional. I've been in the industry for 15 years. This is the current state of play in the industry. There's an infiltration of foreign, you know, international companies that don't adhere to the same standards. And essentially you tell a little bit of the story and where you sit within it, and that is a pitch. And we're in the frame of mind where we're pitching our story to the key players in the media industry. So we can tell our story on that level, and actually become, you know, for those people that are in that position, to become the mouthpiece for the industry. So, you know, I mentioned it briefly, but the champions for the industry. So these are well, like you say, you know, these are the voices that need to be heard, and you know, and to essentially save the industry, you know, to cleanse the industry of these sort of issues and things that are happening. So these people become then the champions of aromatherapy. They may, you know, the point is that they may build quite fruitful relationships with key journalists. So through this process, you might learn that actually, you know, by connecting with journalists, by having this discussion, there might be a few key people that you go, okay, well, she's got a real interest in aromatherapy. He's got a real interest in, you know, corruption, or, you know, the problems, or how these issues have started in that infiltration. And so you may the idea is that you build a few key contacts and connections that you can keep abreast of developments, that you can say, okay, well, look, this is happening and this is a change, and this is something that I really want to share. And it becomes about connecting with the few, rather than looking to connect with the many when it comes to promoting your services. So again, that's the difference between that personal PR element and that service PR element. So I'm going to come back to newsjacking just really, really briefly. It would be interesting. So usually when I do a workshop, I'll do a show of hands, you know, who's heard of, but for anyone that's on Twitter, there's a really great resource, which is a hashtag journo request. So journo is in journalist, request. And this is something that journalists from all sectors of media use to essentially source stories. So they might have something in mind that they want to talk about, and they say, I'm looking for a case study of a person in this industry who's worked in it for X number of years, who can comment on X. Now, you know, like I said, that's non-industry specific, so it could be anyone talking about anything. So quite often you'll go on there and something might not be relevant. You know, there might be a lot that isn't relevant to you, but actually, because it's a free resource, all you need to do is check it maybe once or twice a day. I've seen requests come through on there from BBC Breakfast, Good Morning Britain, 5 Live, The Guardian, Woman and Home, as well as more trade-specific magazines and opportunities. So these things filter through this hashtag, and actually it's a really great resource for newsjacking. So if something's going on in the current sort of, political or business world, like the budget is always a big thing. So you'll quite often have journalists, the sort of money and financial journalists, are saying, oh, how does that affect you as a small business? I'm looking for case studies to talk about the budget and what you're expecting, or know. And actually, if you've got any opinion on that, you respond to that straight away and you say, okay, well, yeah, I can talk on that. Do you want a phone call? But these opportunities will come through that you can respond to, and especially when something, like we say, when something from your industry becomes topical, becomes mainstream, gets all these journalists buzzing about it and gets them interested, that's when you're going to see opportunities coming up for newsjacking through journo request. So PR becomes about understanding, not only having a toolkit, but also understanding how you can use it. And it's like these little sort of tricks and resources and ways that you can connect with people and share your story. So for me, that's sort of third level, if you like, is really about sharing your expertise in a different, maybe more comprehensive way. Speaking on the personal, and that becoming a champion of your industry. You've worked, you've built it out, you've built up your visibility, you're known in your industry, and that's about using that and breaking through into the mainstream, if you like,
and championing the professionalism of the industry rather than not necessarily getting people in through the door.
Absolutely.
If you're passionate about the professional standards of the industry, then let's get your voice heard. And
yeah, definitely. And that activity is still going to get people through the door, because you're speaking to an even wider audience, and you're saying, clearly through your messaging, what you're talking about, and people are going to respond to that. Again, it goes right back to that sort of, in that level one that we were talking about, building that trust relationship with the people you're connecting with. That translates through every element of visibility that we've just covered in those sort of years. But that seems like the most effective way to break it down, because we don't want to go in all guns blazing and be trying everything at once, because that's not going to be fruitful. It's going to be, you're going to consume too much time. Exactly. And this needs to be, any type of activity like this that you're doing yourself, that you're not outsourcing, it needs to be manageable for you. So okay, well, I can start on this and that, get my website up, okay, I can start sharing some messages on social, and I can write a blog post every now and then. Okay, that's the starting point, and then you build from there, and then you build from there. But gosh, within that, I can talk about PR for literally days if no one stopped me. So there's a whole lot more around all of those sort of notions.
In my to-do list is just bigger. That's a But and then, okay, so what about we take away all sort of like your case study of people that you're helping with their PR, and then any you said about the hashtag journal request, which is awesome. I've used that. In fact, I responded to one last week that was looking for a Welsh female entrepreneur in the wellness industry, and I was like, oh, it's
me. Sometimes they will be just perfect, and it's like trawling through the stuff that isn't so perfect.
There's a lot of stuff that definitely wasn't me, but I just thought I could definitely talk about that. But what about any other kind of hints and tips that you could share, like a golden nugget that you could share with our audience here?
Oh, golden nugget. The thing is, you've already had quite a lot from me.
I know, but I'm just trying to extract one more.
Journo request is always like the top tip, because it's free. There are so, and ultimately, with something like journo request, it's about how can you make your activity reactive and easy to balance the proactive outreach that you're going to have to do. So to be chasing guest blog posts and chasing podcast opportunities and chasing media opportunities, how can you structure part of your work to be reactive? So journo request does that, and there are a number of resources that actually do the same thing. So if you've got okay, now you might not have £800, £1,000 a month to pay a PR agency, but maybe you've got £50 a month to subscribe to a sector, a sector-specific media request service. So Response Source is it's a media database, but it's also a media request service, by which, much in the same way as journal request, a journalist will set up the information. So I'm working on this story, I need this case study, I need this information, this is my deadline, here's how you reach me. So Response Source offers that service to journalists that it then seeds out to all its subscribers. Now there's a specific health. So I'm looking. I've got the list of sectors on my wall. So I'm just having a.
I knew what you were doing.
There is a specific health sector for these media requests through Response Source, and so if you were to subscribe and you pay, say £40 or £50 a month, you'd have these coming direct to your inbox. So actually, in any month, there could be 3 or 4 key opportunities for you that could result in coverage, maybe even more opportunities. You'd be looking at, just from reactive work, getting a couple of pieces of coverage potentially every month. So again, if we're looking at being time efficient, but also cost effective, I would say if you've got just a small amount of budget to throw into it, so that you're at least then starting to make connections, because ultimately once you've emailed a journalist through this Response Source platform, that you've got the alert has come through, you can respond, great, okay. Even if you don't get picked up for that opportunity, that is that journalist connection that you've created. So you can see that the value goes beyond just getting those alerts. It's like an in to the journalist. And that's what it's all about. It's all about relationships. And social media is beautiful for that, because we can connect with journalists directly. We can connect with influencers directly, which we never used to be able to do. But there are ways that we can sort of maximise that activity. So Response Source is a really good tool to use as well.
That was definitely a golden nugget right there.
I try.
You exceed my expectations.
There'll be a day where I don't.
No chance. Every day's a school day. Thank you so much. You've been so brilliant. Oh, now what happens, like, if somebody's listening to this and they're thinking, all right, I need to know more, I would like to connect with Fiona to do more, what do you offer for people and how can they contact you?
Okay, so if you want me to carry on talking and ramble to you, then absolutely connect with me. So I'm quite heavily on Instagram. So we talked about where our audience is. My audience is on Instagram. That's where I've kind of built my space. So I'm on Instagram as Boss Your PR. So come and follow me on there. But ultimately my services, I've broken my services down to a number of different access points, if you like. So I have a membership space, which is open to anyone, and it's tiered membership, so you can subscribe at the level that you're comfortable with, and that runs from access to my closed Facebook group and downloadable resources, right through to me connecting you with media contacts and journalists and providing you with media alerts, the kind of thing that I've just spoken about, and training videos every month, as well as sort of extra resources, right through to the top tier, which includes a half-hour mentoring call every month, as well as everything else. So there's a membership space that you can access that is a really good entry point to get you building your confidence with the PR world. I also run online courses. I run workshops and I run online courses. So you can find out more about that on my website, which is bossupr.com. And then I also do a lot of one-to-one work with clients. So I do mentoring sessions. So we can do monthly mentoring sessions. But what I also do is I can do in-depth training. So I do half a day training and strategy creation, which basically gives you all the knowledge in PR that you will need. We deep dive into your brand. What are your stories? What are your hooks? What are the key elements that we want to be sharing with the media? And then I go away and I create a bespoke strategy for the next 12 months for you to work from. And we can handhold, we can do those mentoring calls sort of around that. So it's kind of wherever you sit in terms of how ready you are for PR, there is an offering that should work for you. And all of that information is on my website.
No, that's perfect. And that's bossyourpr.com.
Bossyourpr.com, yeah.
Perfect. Thank you so much.
Thank you. I really enjoyed that. I hope it was useful.
Well, I'm sure it will be really, really useful. And I'm sure that our members will let us know how useful it's been. But thank you for being so willing and so generous with your time.
Anytime.
Really appreciate it. So, and I will see you very soon. Thank you, Fiona.